Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And I saw this meditation in here the other day from The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beatty, the sister meditation book to Codependent No More. I've talked enough about this on here that I think you guys know it. But you know, this meditation was, out of the entire book, you guys, the only one that I had highlighted something in. And when I read it, I was like, I don't know that I think that this is a great meditation to read on the channel, because it is really focused on 12-step programs. But when I reread it today, because I went back and I was like, I feel like I'm maybe supposed to read this meditation. I don't know. Y'all know I feel that way about like God moments and the universe speaking to me and things like that. So when I was opening my meditation book to read it, I was like flipping through and it came right to that page and I was like, maybe I'm supposed to read this for one person out there. I don't know. And, you know, I highlighted it and I reread the highlighted part to myself. And I reread it to myself today and I was like, this has been such an important lesson for me in my life that I wanted to share it with you guys. So, you know, whether you're in recovery or not, I think it's a great meditation. I think it's a great lesson, and I will break it down for you guys in a way that's not 12-step related. And the meditation is from June 6th, and it is called The Gift of Readiness. And the quote is from Step 6 of Al-Anon. We are entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. We progress to the sixth step by working diligently to the best of our ability on the first 5 steps. This work readies us for a change of heart, an openness to becoming changed by a power greater than ourselves, God. The path of this willingness can be long and hard. Many of us have to struggle with a behavior or feeling before we become ready to let it go. We need to see over and over again that the coping device that once protected us is no longer useful. Here's the part that was highlighted for me. The defects of character referred to in Step 6 are old survival behaviors that once helped us cope with people, life, and ourselves. But now they are getting in our way, and it is time to be willing to have them removed. Trust in this time. Trust that you are being readied to let go of that which is no longer useful. Trust that a change of heart is being worked out in you. God, help me become ready to let go of my defects of character. Help me know in my mind and soul that I am ready to let go of my self-defeating behaviors, the blocks and barriers in my life. When I was reading this, it's so weird how the world works for me that tonight is my home group, and I have this feeling that I'm going to go to my home group and we break up into smaller groups, and that my meeting, somebody will bring up the 6th step, and maybe I need to hear that today. I don't know. It's like kind of how the world works for me. And as I'm saying that, the sun is coming out and it's been pouring down rain all day long. So I just look for little messages like that from the universe, you know, and from my higher power. Let me break down the steps for you a little bit in just like layman's terms, and this is from Al-Anon, but how the steps, well, I don't know the steps verse by verse from Al-Anon, but you know, step 1 is admitting that we have become powerless over alcohol or drugs, and in Al-Anon that would be the alcoholic or the addict. Step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That's, you know, believing that some kind of higher power could, you know, get us back to where we were before. And that's the same in Al-Anon, I believe. I don't know, maybe it has the 12 steps in here of Al-Anon. I think it does. Okay, it does. So let me read you from the steps of Al-Anon. Which I am not a member of Al-Anon, so I will read you the 12 steps of Al-Anon. Number 1, we admitted that we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Oh, this is from Alcoholics Anonymous. 12 steps of Al-Anon. We admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, they're exactly the same. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 2, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. This is really a step about surrender, about turning your whole will and life, not just your addiction, but your will and your life over to your higher power that you have now understood and believed. Step 4 is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. That's where we list our inventory, or that's where we do inventory on our resentments, on our fears and our sexual conduct. That's where we talk about all the things in our lives, you know, that have come out, our feelings, our emotions that we have, you know, and you look at what you're resentful at, like just in resentments, you look at what you're resentful at or who, how it's affected you, what specific thing, what areas of your life it's affected, like your self-esteem maybe, or like just all kinds of things, and then you look at what your part is in that, you know, and it's really hard sometimes to find our part in things like that, especially when you're looking at things of abusive nature and stuff when we really don't have a part in that, you know? And then step 5 is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And if you're in a 12-step program, that's typically called just doing a 5th step, and you usually do that with your sponsor. A lot of people do that with therapists or priests or ministers. I know that I think my mother, when she did her 5th step, she did it with her sponsor, but she also did it with her pastor because that was really important to her. And then the 6th step is we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these defects of character. And that's the readiness part of it, because step 7 is humbly ask Him to remove our shortcomings, which is the defects of character. So when you go back to this highlighted part, and it says, the defects of character referred to in step 6, the character defects, okay, that we have, are old survival behaviors that once helped us cope with people, life, and ourselves. But now they are getting in our way, and it is time to be willing to have them removed. You know, I was always taught that when you have a character defect in your life, like lack of patience, right? This was a big one for me when I was, you know, early in sobriety, that you are to practice the opposite. So I would have, like, my sponsor back in the day, and for those of you that don't know about 12-step programs, a sponsor is somebody that has, you know, a year or more sobriety time and that has worked the 12 steps and is kind of a guide or a mentor to you through the 12 steps. And my sponsor at the time, you know, like, because I really struggled with lack of patience, I'm just using this as one example of all of my many, many character defects that I have had in my life and still have today. And it's kind of like I'll get rid of one and then I replace it, you know? But he would have me do things like, when I went into a gas station, I would have to let 3 people go ahead of me. Or I would have to, like, at, you know, like Walmart, go and put up carts that were out in the parking lot. And because I needed to go in and get something, he'd say, okay, well, before you go in, you have to put in 3 carts. You have to push them inside, you know? And, you know, just things of, like, respect and things like that. And today, this is funny because Tanya and I often talk about this, like, when we go to the store. So, like, if you take a candle off because you're going to buy a candle at one part of the store, but then you get to I was going to say something ahead of myself, but you get to the other end of the store and then you realize you don't want that candle, you don't just put it on the aisle of the cereal. You walk back to where the candle was and you replace it. That's respect, right? And I'm, like, really kind of hardcore about that in my own life. And it's just about, like I say on here all the time, about being a better person on a daily basis. You know, I have struggled with a lot of character defects in my life. I've struggled with anger and rage, and I don't want to be that person today. And those are things that I've really, really worked hard on, you know? And in the past, you know, it's like senses of entitlement and things like that, or being right, like the need to be right, was so important to me. That was a character defect that stood in my way of allowing myself to have friendships with people, because, you know, often you realize that, number 1, you aren't right, and number 2, it's not really that important to be right. You know, what's more important, the friendship or the being right? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there are a lot of people that will tell you, even today, that it's more important to be right. And I'm talking about I'm talking about smaller issue stuff. I'm not talking about the big issue stuff, okay? And I want to make that very, very clear, because people will send me emails and they'll say, you know, there's a saying that my sponsors, all of them, have said to me through the years is, would you rather be happy or would you rather be right? And I would rather be happy. And the reason I've heard that over and over, it's a mantra, kind of like a slogan, you know, in 12-step programs. But one of the reasons why I've heard that over and over and over again is because I struggle with that idea of being right versus being happy. And I don't know that necessarily the two can live in the same place. And, you know, a lot of people will say thank you for saying that, but a lot of people are like, I don't agree with that. Like, it's more important for me to be right. And then they'll give me some example, right? Like, where they're disagreeing with, like, a sibling over something that happened to them in their childhood, like a serious thing that happened. And I'm like, well, that's on a completely different level. You know, that's about validation of your story, of your journey. And I can understand why your need to be right would be that important to you. That is completely different. But I'm talking about, like, if you're arguing with your best friend, I'm trying to think of something Tanya and I would argue over, okay, something that happened in a movie, and you're like, that didn't happen in that movie. Yes, it did. And I'm like, no, it didn't. And then you go back and forth. It's like, it's just not that important. You know what I mean? Like, just, if they need to be right, just let them be right. And I think in any really, like, solid friendship, you kind of you realize at some point it just doesn't matter. And it's not even an agree to disagree kind of thing. It's just like, maybe you are right. And I can't tell you how many times I thought I was right, that in retrospect, I find out that I'm wrong. Has that ever happened to you? And you're like, I was willing to fight that, you know? And it just isn't really that important. Today in my life, you know, at 24 and a half years sober, at almost 47 years old, I don't want my character defects to stand in the way of who I am. I don't want my anger, you know, I don't want my lack of patience. I don't want, you know, that goes into being in traffic. You know, years ago, and I've talked about this on here, I read this book by the Buddhist monk, I think you pronounce his name, Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but it's called Peace in Every Step. And I was going to actually read parts of it on this book, but in one part of it, he talks about like when you're driving in your car and you're listening to music and somebody's in front of you and they're doing whatever, what are you doing at that moment? And you have to train yourself to believe that like in that moment I'm singing a song, right? Like you are that present in that moment that you're not getting out of yourself. Well, when I'm driving and I'm watching what everybody's doing and I'm getting frustrated with the person in front of me, you know, because they're going too slow or whatever, then I'm kind of like, I'm out of that. And that is something that I struggle with a lot, you know? But I don't want my character defects to slow me down in life. I don't want them to be obstacles to opportunities, you know? Even my social anxiety, my fear, and my shyness are character defects for me. And those are things that I have to overcome, because if I want to be open to new opportunities and new experiences, you know, I talked in my vlog the other night about me judging this pageant this last week. I mean, I met some phenomenal new friends, and it was so much fun, and I had the time of my life, right? And fear would have kept me from doing that in the past, and I don't want fear to block me from having new experiences. You know, I don't want, you know, anger to stop me from really being somebody's friend, because I'm just like holding on to that resentment or that anger. I need to let it go. And you know, the reality is, and I live by slogans, I really do. They're easy for me. I think people think I'm rather deep. I'm not. I'm very simple. And you know what, the whole idea of anger and resentment to me is renting space in somebody's head for free. And the majority of the time that we're angry or resentful at somebody, they don't even know it. Like they really don't. Like they've gone on with their lives and they don't even know that you're angry or resentful at them, you know? And there have been periods in my life where I've done that. I've been consumed with it. And then I look back and I think I was literally wasting time of my life. Like I was wasting my life being consumed with something that really didn't matter in the long run anyway, you know? And I try really hard not to do that today. I also wake up every day with the idea that today is a learning experience. Like today is a classroom of life, and that I want to learn some new experience today. And what is the lesson that I'm being taught? You know, and often I'm taught lessons through character defects. I really, really am when I see them flare up. And to this day, I think to myself, the thing I was taught 24 years ago, when you see a character defect, act up, do the opposite. You know, when you're angry, act out of love. When you're impatient, try patience. And sooner or later, those things will come back to you and they'll even out. And what you'll realize is you're learning patience, you're learning compassion, and then we become a better person. Those character defects aren't there to shame us. They're there to teach us. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.